Hey guys, hope you're doing amazing today. If you're new here, I'm Samantha and I've been creating a video every single day for 356 days. And thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of this with me all throughout this time. And I'm sitting on the floor today. I'm just working on the hip mobility a little bit. And I thought, hey, let's simplify and not use the little chair I was using and see how this goes. So just sitting on the floor, having a great time. And wanted to talk about a lot of things today, as you know. Always I got something to talk about. First thing I wanted to talk about is trust where you are. Always trust where you are. This is what Bashar says. He says, even if it's only to learn that you don't prefer where you are. So always trust in where you are. Do not invalidate it or you will stick to it like glue. And we just need to know that we're giving it more power by acknowledging it and by focusing on it in a negative way. So you get to decide how you look at everything. So remember that everything that's happening is happening for you. It's for your benefit. And even if it's just showing you that you don't prefer that, and that's great because it's giving you some sort of clarity that you wouldn't have had that thing not show up for you. So everything is for your benefit. It's to show you who you're being internally, because everything, as within, so without. So everything that's going on inside of us is going to be reflected back to us. And I love to play that game. I mean, I used to get stuck in the why, like, why is this happening? And, why is this happening this way? And it's really there to help you clarify. And another thing Bashar says was the idea of being yourself clarifies the rest of the reality around you and demonstrates very clearly with what is and isn't vibrationally compatible with who you prefer to be. So just be the example of who you want to be, and whoever follows you will follow you and will be there. So you have compassion for others throughout the process because they're making choices that they need to make for their own life. And so you just act as an example because everybody is doing what they need to do that they feel serves them. So you've got to do that too. You got to always do what you feel serves you best. And so that's some Bashar stuff for you. And then another thing is create a feeling and maintain it. So decide who you want to be and create the feeling of that. And then your goal is to maintain it. I was listening to Kevin Trudeau, I think is his last name. I think that's how you say it. And he said he did this when he was living in a little apartment. He used to imagine living in mansions. And he created the feeling of it in his mind. And then he opened his eyes and he noticed he was in the apartment, but he kept that feeling going all the time to the point where he owned multiple mansions later on. So it's feeling the feeling anyway. I'm really big on this. It's like we want to feel good all the time, not just when we get something. And what's funny is as soon as you start feeling that way and you maintain it, you start getting what you're wanting more. But it doesn't feel like you think it would feel because you've already been feeling that for so long that it just becomes your natural state. And that's what we want. We want to maintain that natural state of having something. Let's see. Marcus Aurelius said, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself what kind of person you intend to be today. So do that every day. What type of person do I intend to be today? What would that look like? What would I think about? What version of me would think these thoughts that I'm thinking right now? We snap back into that old version sometimes when we get triggered. I've had that happen multiple times this week. And it just, you just become aware of it. You acknowledge it. And you say, nope, that's not me anymore. I had experienced a trigger. And then, let's see, intention before activation. So always have an intention before you activate and before you execute. Always have that intention behind it and the why behind it too. I like to include that. Why do you want something? What will it make you feel if you become that or have that? And then you maintain it. And that's our challenge as human beings because we've got a lot of distractions going on. So we've got to also eliminate every limiting belief that is holding you back from becoming what you want. And this is something that I realized today. This was a big realization. This is something that I didn't realize, or I did realize but I didn't realize it in the way that I realized it today. It was very potent this morning when I was on my first walk of the day. Of course, we're doing 75 hard, so I've got my 45-minute walk later, in the day, my second walk. So my first walk, that's normally when I get the most downloads in the morning. And I just was feverishly taking some notes, of course, as usual, ideas on where I want to go next. And I realized this big realization finally hit me. And it was like I knew that, or I realized that long story short, I was married for 8 years. And then in 2014, we got a divorce. So it really, really killed me inside. I mean, it was horrible. And then I've been just kind of in survival ever since then and didn't even realize it, in certain ways. And I've finally been getting out of that the last couple of years. Never felt better. Every single day gets better and better. It's like, training your nervous system to feel safe again, or maybe safe for the first time ever, and to slow down and eliminate things that you don't need. And so that's what I've been doing, is like letting go of things, letting go of layers of myself that I didn't need anymore. And what I realized is I was holding on to I forgot who I was before I got married. And I forgot who I was when I was married, because those times in my life were my formative years. And so once the divorce happened, I completely did not a 180, but like anything that reminded me of my life before then, I was like, nope, I'm going to do the opposite. Like I had an iPhone for years and then I got an Android, and I was like, I can't even have anything that reminds me of my old life. Like that, I literally did that. Moved to a different town for like 8 months, 7 months. Just all kinds of things that I did right after to not remind me. And it really helped. It was great. But then I have been remembering over the last few weeks of who I was a long time ago, before the marriage, which is really interesting. And then during, I remember how I was business, money-minded. I was always watching Super Soul Sunday with Oprah, of course. I was taking notes back then, as I am now to this day. And I was very spiritual. I was getting into the law of attraction and learning about all this stuff. And I was just always into this from when I was probably mid to late teens up until, now. And I had forgotten pieces of me from back then. And so I just encourage everyone to notice where you might have forgotten some pieces of you somewhere from back then, or back, even last week. Don't forget who you are. There's when things happen to you, it puts you into survival. Your nervous system starts getting, in fight or flight all the time. You're hypervigilant. You're just kind of like, okay, this thing happened. Now I've got to adjust. And so all these other things happen during the day. And it's like, okay, I got to adjust to this and adjust to this. And we're really good adjusters and chameleons. But then sometimes we leave the old us behind, the pieces that do need to come into the now to express who you really are. So I definitely determined or remembered more of who I was before, because I don't want to let go of those pieces. Those pieces are propelling me forward. And I'll tell more of that story probably on my last video that I do, because it was just really interesting what I came up with and everything. But and when I say my last video, that won't be my last video, but the 365th video, that's when I'll probably talk more about that. But it's just really been a great realization to kind of think back and remember that I was on a track that when the divorce happened, I kind of forgot my track. I just kind of started surviving. I started, using my degrees and becoming a therapist and like starting over and living on my own for the very first time in my whole life. And just all these things I was having to adjust to and learn to live a new life, because I was a we for so long. And then now I'm just an I. And so that was hard to, to kind of piece out my new role as being single at, I think I was 31. And so that was just really, it was really hard. It was really, really hard. And I noticed that it was just like one of the biggest turning points, I guess, in my life. I had some others, but that was definitely a pivotal time. I learned so much, but it made me forget who I was before. And I think I pushed away the old me because I must have had, I think what was going on was I think my self-worth was lower after the divorce too. I think it lowered, my light was out. I remember looking in the mirror and saying, oh my gosh, my light is out. Like I told myself, your light is out. I saw it in the mirror. It was so sad. So sad. But such beautiful things have come after that, of course. And that was not my person. That was my person at the time. That was not my person forever, like I thought. And that's okay. And that happens to us sometimes, you know. That's what Bashar says. We don't need to invalidate that. We need to use that as a stepping stone. That was a beautiful experience. Not in the moment, was it? And I didn't know to do all this work at the time, like as in depth as I do now. I was just touching on it, but oh man, did that really get me into this work? And I found all the mentors and all the everything, like really in depth. And it's helped me more than anything. So I hope that my experiences going through all of this moving forward can help you too. I'm just a normal person like you are. I know nothing. I know only what works for me in the moment. And anything that I pass on, try it, see what works for you, and never invalidate anything that comes into your life because it's there in perfect timing, and you get to decide what meaning you give it, and it's there to show you what you prefer sometimes because we really don't know what we prefer until we actually see some contrast sometimes. Like, you never know. I mean, you think you like chocolate cake your whole life and you've never tried, strawberry cake. Well, you might really like strawberry cake and you just don't know it because it hasn't come into your life yet. Or, because you think the chocolate's your favorite, but then all of a sudden that strawberry comes along and you're like, man, that's my favorite now. I had no idea. And so we never know until something actually comes into our life, whether we're going to like it or not, or maybe you hate strawberry cake and you're like, man, I'm glad I've been choosing the chocolate all these years. I prefer this. So and now I know that. And now I can appreciate the chocolate cake more. I think it makes us appreciate things more too. So always appreciate your growth that you're making every day and enjoy every moment. That's the goal, is to be in the moment. And Bashar also says that we need to be in the moment because if we're in the beliefs of the past, we're technically in that past. So we're not present, which means everything happens in the present. So if something is trying to come into the present, it's like knocking on the door and you're not home because your limiting beliefs have you such, anchored to the past so much that you're not home. So you can't receive the package if you're in the past with those beliefs. So you want to figure out and knock off all those old limiting beliefs about yourself. The self-doubt, all of those things do not have any bearing on where you're going. You get to decide what you believe. You get to decide what you think. You get to decide what you feel. You get to choose all the time, all of those things. And examine your belief systems. Always examine those beliefs. Where did those come from? And your inner conversations too. How am I speaking to myself? I really love to do things deliberately. Like I've said, I like to talk to myself really nicely during the day, deliberately. Like I'm deciding to do this right now and talking to myself like I'm another person. And I love to write things as if they've happened already. That really has shown to change the structure of your brain by writing something out. Also, when you're writing it, again, your brain and body don't know the difference in between something that's actually happened and something that has not actually happened. So what fun is that, to just almost like write a story about your life and act as if that's happened, just like you would get into a story that you're reading. It's like get into the story of, your own story, like really get into that story and feel the emotions that you would feel, just like you're reading a book, but it's the book of your life. So how exciting is that? That's pretty awesome. So it's about creating those feelings and feeling it in your body and getting your body involved in it too. We've got to get the body involved with the mind because it's all connected. So just practice these things and practice that self-talk. It's so important. I feel that's probably the most important thing, is noticing, how am I speaking to myself and how am I showing up every day for myself? How am I doing? Measure yourself. How am I doing today? Am I actually keeping the promises I make? And I heard Lewis Howes too talk about how he listed all of his fears, and he went all in. Public speaking was his number one fear, and he went all in on it. And he's like, just go all in on your fears until they aren't a fear anymore. And so I look at what I'm doing as that's definitely doing that, because that's my number one fear, is public speaking. I'd rather die than publicly speak, and literally. And it was that bad. And so I feel like now practicing talking to you through this thing, this camera, this black thing in front of me with a lens and this light above me, it's like, I feel like I would be better in public now, because I actually, face the fear. So face your fears. If I could tell you anything to do, that would be it too. Just anything you're scared of, examine why you're scared of it too. Like, what's the fear about? Mine was fear of judgment and fear of stumbling over my words and, just fear of looking dumb or whatever, not knowing enough in a certain area or whatever the case is. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're practicing. I'm literally building myself in public. Building. I have no idea what I'm doing. Ever since the beginning, I didn't know what I was doing. But that's okay. I told myself, you got to do this. And I didn't know why, but I just went ahead and did it. And it has changed me internally so much, because I'm finally expressing certain things in me that I've wanted to express publicly instead of in sessions that are confidential. I do these awesome sessions with people and I'd be like, man, I wish I could record this. This was awesome, because I was in my element. But then I would turn on the camera and it'd be hard, because I would have to think of something to say. And in a session, it just comes so naturally. So I try to channel in these messages as much as possible too, and not have so many notes. But I get off track and ramble, as you know, and I'm rambling right now. So I hope you're enjoying my ramble tonight. So I just had a lot of realizations today, and I encourage you to think about your younger self and the things that you might have left behind that you really enjoyed, that you might want to resurrect today in your life and use and do and enjoy, and just kind of remember who you were before the bad things happened to you too, before the world kind of made you a little bit, jaded in some areas. And you've had those experiences that stink. But remember, we define them. They didn't really stink, maybe. They might look like they do. They have all the characteristics of stinkiness, but they created something else in you that you needed to move forward in some area in your life. And if everything benefits you, then if you start believing that, everything will change internally and externally every single time. I wholeheartedly know this and believe it. So I want you to know and believe it too. So keep practicing, and I'll be back tomorrow. Remember, you're so loved. Love yourself exactly the way that you are every day. Love yourself exactly the way that you are, and tell yourself, my life is getting better and better. I am getting better and better every day. Every single day I'm getting better and better. And remember to appreciate yourself, because what you appreciate appreciates. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.